Hello, this is John Bissett, editor and producer of the podcast. This episode was supposed to go out last week, but we ran into an issue with exporting one of the audio files. This has been fixed, but there is still 1 minute where the audio is of lesser quality. Thanks again for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed this episode.
Welcome to Only Murders in My Mind. Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of Only Murders in My Mind. I can't remember what episode we're up to now. We're getting into
50
the...
something.
This one's 62.
60?
Is it really? No.
Wow, have we been doing it that long, John? Yes, he's nodding.
Wow. Is that a weary, resigned nod by any chance?
Oh yes, all that editing, yeah.
At least he's laughing and not continuing to nod, I guess.
Yes, so you're doing a good job.
You are, doing a fabulous job.
And I've got Liz with me as usual, Liz Hedgecock.
Hello.
Writer extraordinaire.
Oh, thank you. And we are still sadly without Mike,
Yeah.
but we are hoping that he will be back with us very soon.
Yes, hopefully for the next episode.
Yes.
Fingers and toes crossed. But once again, he has come up trumps and provided myself especially with information about today's topic, which is Richard III.
Dun, dun, dun. That's the thing. Everyone knows Richard III, or do they?
They think they do, yeah.
I won't say allegedly so much this time, honest.
Yeah, so Richard III, 1452 to 1485, was the last Plantagenet king of England and the final ruler of the House of York. So we all know about, well, in England we do, about the House of York and
the Wars of the Roses.
Yes,
Yes.
and the House of the Tudors. York. When I was at school, we had houses named after like York, Lancaster, Edinburgh.
Okay.
I was in Lancaster, which was red. Yeah, and we had to get house points. It was a bit like Hogwarts.
Oh yeah, ours were in primary school. They were named after rivers.
Yeah.
I was in Thames House, I think.
Well, there you go.
And in secondary school, it was named after older members of staff. So I was in Johnson House, which was blue.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, well, as I say, I was in the red, and we had badges. We had a red badge or a blue badge, and as I say, it was if you lost a house point. I remember two girls once scrapping, and the teacher going, "I'm going to take a house point off each of you," and so they both shut up.
Did the teacher then turn into a cat?
Not quite, no.
Fly off the room, maybe disappear into a portrait.
Possibly. And they carried on again, and she took 5 off both of them.
Whoa.
Which meant their house lost at the end of the year, and they didn't get the shield. Oh, disgrace.
Oh, absolute. Wow. I don't think we took it as seriously as that, I have to say.
It was an all-girls school, and it was quite strict. But I'm going back a long time.
We were mixed, you see.
Yeah, so
Very mixed.
okay. So
Richard III.
Yes, he wasn't king for an awfully long time. 2 years by the looks of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, there was a lot going on at the time.
A hell of a lot going on.
Intrigue. I mean, wow.
Yes. It was marked with his rule was marked by controversy, intrigue, and ultimately a dramatic downfall at the Battle of Bosworth Field.
He got killed. Sorry, is that a spoiler?
Not quite.
Not really.
No. And that was the end of the War of the Roses. Yes,
and the Tudors came in.
It was going on for ages, wasn't it? The War of the Roses, bits here, bits there. You know.
Oh, the thing is, when I did history at school, we kind of jumped around quite a lot.
Yeah.
Because I remember my parents being absolutely disgusted with the way I was being taught history because I couldn't do like the kings and queens in order and the dates and all of that. And they were like, "What sort of history is this?"
Yeah.
They asked me what I was learning about. I'm learning about canals. They'd be like, "What good is that?"
Yeah, it does seem a bit haphazard.
Well, no, the thing is, we were doing the Industrial Revolution,
yes,
and like social and economic history in the Victorian period. So canals, railways, all of that stuff was absolutely in there.
I can see that. I mean, we did,
but it wasn't
history.
kings and queens
No,
history. So
no.
yeah,
we did history, and then that would have come under geography for us. So like social geography sort of thing.
Oh, there you go. You see, humanity's moving around.
Oh, it is. Definitely.
But yeah, I mean, the whole thing about how history is taught and the way we learn it is dead important for Richard III.
It is.
Because as preparation for today, I have actually read Shakespeare's play, Richard III. And I hate to tell you this, but I actually really enjoyed it.
There's a recommendation, folks.
There you go. It's a long one.
Yeah.
It's one of his longer ones. But
got
there
it
are
here.
some cracking bits. I've also got The Daughter of Time, which you are now holding in your hand.
Oh,
With a
yay.
picture of Mr. Richard III on the front. Yes. So I brought that along because that is also an interesting thing. But yeah, with Richard III, Shakespeare's version, kind of like Taylor's version, he was writing it when the Tudors were still very much in the ascendancy.
Yeah.
So his Richard is, I'm going to be honest, kind of a bit of a pantomime villain.
Yeah.
It is great fun to read.
Yeah.
But you do kind of think, is this necessarily exactly accurate? Because he is a villain and he enjoys it.
Yeah. He's a nasty piece of work, isn't he?
Oh, the stuff he does. And as I was reading, I was like, he's not going to get away with this. And he keeps going and he keeps going and you can see the person weakening. And you think, he is actually going to do this. And it's fascinating. It really is. I enjoyed it very much.
Sounds like The Traitors.
It kind of is a bit, yeah. It's just, I'll see if I can find you a speech from the beginning. But yeah, so what do you know about Richard III,
Well, one
Carol,
of the
flicking
things
through my Kindle?
I was going to say, one of the things that always comes up when we talk about Richard III or you read about him was The Princes in the Tower.
Oh, yes.
And it is a mystery, whether it happened or not. It was during
I did
Richard's
this as a
reign.
case study, in history.
Oh, did you?
Yes, I think it was during GCSE and we were given various documents.
Oh, that's interesting.
From the time, and we had to try and work out what we thought happened to the princes in the tower.
Well, I'll tell you what mythology says, and then you can tell me what you found out.
Okay.
So, the fate of the princes in the tower: Richard's two young nephews, Edward V and Richard, Duke of York, and they were imprisoned in the Tower of London, but that vanished from history, and many believe Richard had them killed, and in a horrible, horrible way as well. But there's no proof. Some theories suggest they were murdered by others, such as Henry Tudor supporters. So there's that speculation as well. So if he managed to overthrow Richard, then there was nobody to take the throne after his death from the Plantagenet side.
Well, the thing was, what I understand is that Henry Tudor, the thing was, with the princes in the tower, there was some question about whether their father had actually divorced or stopped being married to first wife and had married before marrying a second wife.
Right.
So they were probably illegitimate.
Legitimate.
In which case they had no claim.
No, they didn't, did they?
Yeah. And the thing is, that basically put Richard in the clear.
Yeah. There was no point in killing him.
Yeah. Whereas Henry Tudor, obviously they were still there. And I mean, he was, I think, doing the thing of, oh no, they're legitimate and you killed them and it's all terrible and we're going to fight you now.
Yeah.
So
he was like,
this is my limited understanding.
Planting the seed.
Seriously, reading the play, it's like people are here, they're everywhere, they're changing allegiance. I mean, this could be just Shakespeare saying this, but they're back, they're forth, they're here, they're there, they're with someone else.
It's definitely like The Traitors.
It is really, yeah. But it feels very claustrophobic.
It's suffocating.
Yeah, it's all kind of in London, in a room.
Yeah.
And again,
very intense.
A bit traitorsy. But yeah, I mean, to give you a flavour of what it's like, because the thing is, Richard III starts off, it's in London, A Street, enter Gloucester, and he's on his Todd. So it starts off, now is the winter of our discontent, made glorious summer by the son of York, etc., etc. So everything in the garden is lovely, etc. But I'm going to read a bit of this here now. I, that am not shaped for sportive tricks, nor made to court an amorous looking glass, I, that am rudely stamped and what loves majesty, to strut before a wanton ambling nymph, I, that am curtailed of this fair proportion, cheated of feature by dissembling nature, deformed, unfinished, sent before my time into this breathing word scarce half made up, and that so lamely and unfashionable that dogs bark at me as I halt by them. Why I, in this weak piping time of peace, have no delight to pass away the time unless to spy my shadow in the sun, and descant on mine own deformity, and therefore, He's having a real go, isn't he?
Yeah.
Since I cannot prove a lover to entertain these fair, well-spoken days, I am determined to prove a villain and hate the idle pleasures of these days. Plots have I laid, inductions dangerous, by drunken prophecies, libels and dreams to set my brother Clarence and the king in deadly hate the one against the other. There we go.
It's a bit of a buzzkill, isn't he?
So he's basically saying, right, well, there's nothing here for me, so I'm just going to do what I fancy. And what I fancy is messing it up.
I'm going to cause problems. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And he's got quite a few asides during it, and he'll plot with his mates. So he's got this mate Buckingham, and they're hand in glove, and they're working together. And it's dead funny because they'll be having a good old conversation, and then someone else going, "Oh, hello, how's it all going?" And he's all like smiling. "Oh yes, loyalty, very important." And you've just heard him doing all this stuff, and the barefaced cheek of the man.
Yeah.
So you can have a lot of I can imagine a lot of fun with it. In fact, I've seen Richard III, and I was dead lucky because when I was at school, Ian McKellen was doing his. And we got to see it. Oh, my life.
I was going to ask if you'd actually seen it.
Yeah. Oh.
With him as the lead.
Well, part of it is he's wooing Anne.
Yeah.
He's just killed her husband. And I think her father as well. And she is she's spitting on him. But by the end of that scene, she's let him kiss her. And you're just watching all this go on. I don't believe he's even trying this. Any normal person would have just, gone, right, okay, fair play, I'll go away now. But he's got no shame. Just goes for it.
Oh.
Kills her later.
Oh, yeah, well. who would trust him?
The body count is, really quite something.
So he's a bit of a serial killer, is he?
Oh, well, all the ghosts turn up and,
they do, they haunt him, don't they?
Yeah, in the play, on the night before the battle, they all come to him and, have a go at him, and then they go to his Redley rival and go, "Oh yeah, we hope you win. Hope you're having a nice kip there." They're a bit more flowery about it, but you get the idea.
Yeah. So a lot of people didn't really like him very much, and had reason to by the sounds of it. If you look at Shakespeare's play,
if it actually happens.
Yes, if you look at Shakespeare's play, because we've got here some notes from Mike, and it says, was he a villain or is he a victim? And we say Shakespeare's portrayal of Richard III is often remembered as a hunchback villain, thanks to Shakespeare's play.
As you've heard from what I read, he's saying, "Oh, I'm a right state."
He was portrayed as a ruthless, power-hungry usurper. However, this was largely Tudor propaganda.
Yes.
Written during the reign of Elizabeth I, who was Henry VII's granddaughter, which is what we've sort of said.
Basically what people said at the time was, well, one of his shoulders was a bit higher than the other.
He has scoliosis of the spine.
Yeah, and they said, it probably wasn't that serious. No. And from when they found his remains, they said, well, yes, this person definitely had scoliosis, but it wasn't that bad.
No, you're right. He probably had, he probably held himself slightly at a funny angle.
Yeah, well, there's a picture of him.
Yes.
And he doesn't look particularly...
No, he doesn't look deformed at all, does he?
It's not a Quasimodo kind of, levels here.
Yeah, because he sort of, he is portrayed as being quite... grotesque in a way, isn't he, in the plays and things, because he sort of walks with a limp and everything, and I think he does anyway because of his back. And modern views, well, historians debate whether Richard was as bad as they say. Some see him, from what he did do during his very short reign, as a capable ruler who made important reforms such as improving the legal system and championing the rights of the poor. And I don't know what historical evidence there is of that, but to say that, I presume there is something somewhere. There'll be some documents somewhere that people have looked at. The Battle of Bosworth and his death. So 1485, Henry Tudor, later Henry VII, he challenged Richard's claim to the throne. On the 22nd of August, 1485, the two armies met at the Battle of Bosworth Field. And this is where a horse, my kingdom for a horse.
Yeah, I think that's about the last thing that Richard says in the play, because he's, wants to get a horse and go and find Henry. And
his horse has gone from under him, hasn't it? That's the sort
pretty
of thing.
much, yeah. I mean, they said when they found Richard that he had an awful lot of head wounds, so it suggests he probably lost his helmet in battle and got hit a lot. So he died fighting.
Yes, he did. Yeah,
it wasn't like he was holed up somewhere or anything like that.
So, but yeah, it was the end of an era, or as my mum used to say, at the end of an era. Henry Tudor was crowned Henry VII, and it did end the War of the Roses. And we know how powerful the Tudors were. Was there 3 Tudor monarchs? Was it Henry VII, Henry VIII, and Elizabeth? There wasn't.
Mary Tudor.
Mary Tudor, and I was thinking there was a very short-lived king as well.
Oh yes, of course. That would have been Elizabeth's older brother, or not older brother, maybe even younger brother.
Yeah.
As in The Prince and the Pauper.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. We're sitting there in modern times, because nobody really knew where his remains were. And that was probably because Henry wanted, they didn't want somewhere people would act as a shrine, people would go and visit.
It was a case of we're getting him in the ground as
quick as possible. So there was no pomp and ceremony, and he was just basically dumped, wasn't he?
He was. Going back to his legacy, actually, because you were saying about the legal reforms, he did quite a lot of stuff in that 2 years. So there was a Council of the North.
Right.
So he was, championing the Northerners.
All right, by me,
Northern powerhouse, you see. So there was that. Apparently it greatly improved conditions for Northern England. He instituted the Court of Requests, so kind of like legal aid. If you couldn't afford legal representation, you could apply there for your grievances to be heard. He improved bail. He founded the College of Arms. He banned restrictions on the printing and sale of books.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and he ordered that the written laws and statutes were translated from French into English.
I think they're all
so
very
that people
good
could
things.
Understand him. Yeah. Also, Parliament ended the benevolence, which was how Edward IV had raised funds.
Ah, right.
So kind of, kingly fundraising there. So that ended. He made it punishable to conceal from a buyer of land that some of the property had already been sold to somebody else.
Ooh.
Laid down property qualifications for jurors, regulated cloth sales, instituted certain forms of trade protectionism, prohibited the sale of fraudulent measures of wine and oil, and improved the law of trusts.
He did a lot.
So he's got a lot done. I mean, Parliament as well, but he got a lot done in that time.
And as you said, a lot of that was for the ordinary man.
Yes. And historian John Rouse, during his reign, praised him as a good lord with a great heart who punished oppressors of the commons.
Yeah.
So
that makes him sound like he probably wasn't the terrible person that we... And as you say, Shakespeare, Elizabeth was one of his patrons, wasn't she? He wasn't going to diss her.
Oh, no,
her granddad.
Absolutely not. The thing is, Shakespeare was writing to the fashion. I mean, if you think of Macbeth...
Yes.
Wasn't that done for James I, who'd written a book on demonology?
I don't know,
That's where the witches came
Oh,
in.
of course, yes.
So there you go.
Oh, well, yeah. So
you've got to please your patrons. You can't be, annoying the Queen or the King. That is not how this stuff works.
Because he was making a good living out of it.
Well, that's the thing. What else would you do, really?
Yeah. So, and it's funny, actually, because when you watch something on television that's based on a true story, there's always that little caveat, isn't it, that says some of the characters and things that happened may be altered for dramatic licence. So that's what Shakespeare was doing with knobs on, basically.
Oh, definitely.
So, as I say, they knew about... Richard III's remains, and his resting place was that it was somewhere in Leicester, because that was the area that he was killed in. And hey ho, 2012, weren't they just digging up a car park in Leicester, and what did they found?
Dun, dun, dun.
But some skeletal remains. And they didn't just go, oh, shall we say this is Richard III because it'll get us a lot of publicity? No, There was a lot of research done into this.
Yeah. Well, apparently the University of Leicester, Leicester City Council and the Richard III Society, yes, there is one, announced in 2012 they were going to look for the remains of King Richard. So apparently the Society had a Looking for Richard project.
Oh, very nice. Yeah. Oh, I think that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So they compared fixed points between maps, apparently. They found the church where the body had been hastily buried, and its foundations were identifiable beneath a modern city car park. Apparently in 1975, Audrey Strange of the Richard III Society predicted that the lost grave was beneath one of the 3 car parks that partly cover the site of the former Greyfriars Priory. So yes, the excavators found the church, and 2 days later...
There he was.
In the course of the first excavation at the car park.
That was lucky.
X marks the spot.
You're not joking. I mean, the research must have been spot on. I mean, 500 years later.
Yeah.
They're finding this.
So how did they know it was definitely Richard?
Well, they did DNA testing because there is a long lost relative of Richard III.
Yes,
so
they also examined what was left and the spine.
They saw the skeleton was deformed. There was
one shoulder possibly higher than the other.
Yeah, and there was lots of marks where they think he was attacked once he was dead with swords, etc.
There was an arrowhead embedded in the spine.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they didn't. It wasn't just guesstimate. I mean, they went on history to find the place, and they were spot on. And then, as I say, I think DNA testing is the one that most people go. Yeah. I mean, his skeleton would have been in a terrible state because he may have been in a coffin, or they may have just wrapped him in a cloth and dumped him in the ground. They began an excavation in August 2012. And the skeleton was discovered, and as I say, spine deformity. He did not have a hunchback, according to that. The skull showed 2 fatal blows to the head. Other injuries, such as cuts to the ribs, pelvis, suggested he'd been attacked after death, and a DNA testing. So there is a confirmed match with Michael Isban, a direct descendant of Richard's sister, Anne of York.
Yeah, so mitochondrial DNA passed down the direct maternal line.
Yeah. So,
which is pretty conclusive.
It's amazing. That,
it is
isn't
amazing.
It?
Yes.
Absolutely amazing.
Yes, apparently they also conducted a facial reconstruction.
Yes, I remember that was on television.
Yeah,
well,
based on 3D
television.
mappings of his skull.
Yeah.
The face is described as warm, young, earnest, and rather serious.
Oh.
Because the thing is, he was only in his early 30s when he died.
He was only young, wasn't he, really? That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it was decided, and quite rightly, that he should be reburied in a place that was fitting for an ex-king, if you like. They didn't. There was a bit of a debate, where should we bury him? And they eventually, it was Leicester Cathedral, and that happened on the 26th of March 2015, and it was a big ceremony. Prince Richard, Duke of Gloucester, who holds Richard III's former title, was there. And should be. And his new tomb is a simple but elegant stone slab marked with his name and the royal crest. And it was watched by millions of people around the world because of the interest in the history.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Everyone thinks they know about Richard III, don't they? Yeah.
Now, you've got a book there, which I really must read because
I have got a book.
I've been having a look at the back and it looks really interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It is great. What I've got here is The Daughter of Time, and I have raved about this book before. It's by Josephine Tay. And it concerns Richard III, and it's like a very, very cold case indeed. So the setup here is that Alan Grant, who's an inspector, a police inspector, works at Scotland Yard. He's bedbound because basically he's got injured on the job. He's got a broken leg. He is stuck in hospital and he is bored out of his skull. Everyone's been sending him books to read. He doesn't want to read any of them. So the poor man is just, eating his heart out, staring at the ceiling, wanting to do something. And one of his friends remembers that he's got a real thing for faces, which is handy if you're a police officer. Yes. And he's the kind of guy, there's a story in the run-up to it where he's I think he's visiting a different station and they're doing an identity parade. And, the guy's with, so who do you think did it? And he said, it's third from the left. And, you know, they have a bit of a chuckle. And then the identity parade breaks up. You know, they can't hear or see any of this. And the other, 11 of them go off. And third from the left gets taken back to the cells.
Hey.
And it's like, well, how did you know?
Facial recognition.
He said he's the only one without a line on his face.
Oh.
And he said, the kind of crime, because this is like a wide boy. He said, this is the kind of crime that someone who's basically irresponsible and an idiot. And that is the face of someone like that. And he was right. So anyway, his friend, who remembers he's got a thing for faces, has brought him lots of photographs, various, some of them historical. And one of them, it turns out, is of Richard III. And he looks at it and he says, it was the portrait of a man. So this is Josephine Tay writing. A man dressed in the velvet cap and slash doublet of the late 15th century, a man about 35 or 6 years old, lean and clean-shaven. He wore a rich jewelled collar and was in the act of putting on a ring on the little finger of his right hand. But he was not looking at the ring, he was looking off into space. Of all the portraits Grant had seen this afternoon, this was the most individual. It was as if the artist had striven to put on canvas something that his talent was not sufficient to translate into paint. The expression in the eyes, that most arresting and individual expression, had defeated him. What he had best succeeded in was the bone structure of the face, the strong cheekbones, the hollows below them, the chin too large for strength. Grant paused in the act of turning the thing over to consider the face a moment longer. A judge, a soldier, a prince? Someone used to great responsibility and responsible in his authority. Someone too conscientious. A warrior, perhaps a perfectionist. A man at ease in a large design but anxious over details. A candidate for gastric ulcer. Someone, too, who had suffered ill health as a child. He had that incommunicable, indescribable look that childhood suffering leaves behind it. Less positive, but as inescapable. This the artist had both understood and translated into terms of paint. The slight fullness of the lower eyelid, like a child that has slept too heavily. The texture of the skin, the old man look in a young face. He turned the portrait over to look for a caption. On the back was printed Richard III from the portrait in the National Portrait Gallery. Artist unknown. He turned the paper over and looked again. Was that what the artist had tried to convey when he had painted those eyes? Had what he had seen in those eyes been the look of a man haunted? So one of the nurses comes back and he pushes the portrait at her. What did she think of it? If that man were her patient, what would be her verdict? Liver, she said crisply. But it's great because, he shows this to lots of the staff and they've all got opinions and they all remember what they learnt at school. And he killed the princes in the tower.
Yes, yeah.
And all of that stuff. And it just draws him in to find out what happened. And he ends up getting them to buy him history books and delving into it. And basically he's doing a cold case from a hospital bed.
Ah, right.
And it is great fun.
Oh, so. It sounds it, because as I say, I was reading the back in between our recordings and it sounds like something I'd really enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Well, read it.
I will.
There you go.
Can I borrow that?
There you go. Live on air.
Yeah.
Book swap.
Yeah, and I will report back and tell you what I think. So, as I say, the grave was his original grave was dug very quickly because Henry VII wanted to get rid of the body and prevent any potential martyrdom. Mm-hmm. Greyfriars Priory was the original burial site.
Yes, and that's where they identified it. Have we actually talked about the princes in the tower?
We did mention them. I think we did mention them.
I talked about it before.
I said at the beginning they it was one of the enduring mysteries.
Yes, and of course, Henry Tudor put it about that Richard III had done it.
Yeah. Yeah,
because you wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And obviously Richard III's dead, so he's not going to say that.
Yeah. So you're building up that profile of him being like an uncaring, vicious man.
Yeah,
for anybody that's coming after him, sort of thing.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
But in the play, Shakespeare's play, there's an awful lot of fake news going on.
Yeah, bet there was. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And Richard III is absolutely fabricating it himself, and he'll come in and go, "Who's cursed me? What happened to my arm? It was them that did it. It was the Queen and this person." And he'll get one of the followers that he's suspicious of and he wants to get rid of. He's like, "Oh, what do you think they deserve?" And then the follower goes, oh, I mean, if they did it. He's like, what do you mean if? Treason, take him away and behead him, and that's that. And you just think, wow.
Yeah. Just don't look at me like that.
Absolute loose cannon in the play.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I can understand why. It sounded great being in the upper echelons of royalty in those times, but you could be top of the tree one day and under the tree the next, couldn't you?
And you see a lot of that in the play.
Yeah.
People who think they're favourites, and then the next thing you know,
they're chopped down. You know, I must admit, when I love the historic period of the Tudors, but part of this isn't going to sound good, but part of it's to do with all the torturing they did.
It really explains quite a lot.
Yeah, when you read me books, it probably will. Right, I think we've covered everything.
I think we've done Richard III.
I think we've done him proud.
Extensive.
Yes, and as I say, it has altered my views on the character, the character in the play, and the person from history.
Yeah, and that's the thing, I suppose, because Shakespeare is canon. And Shakespeare plays are generally held up as, brilliant stuff. I think sometimes people were confusing great drama with actual historical accuracy.
Yeah, and that is so evident here, and I think people should consider things like that.
And one of the things that Josephine Tay does in The Daughter of Time is, loads of people saying, oh, Richard III was an absolute villain. What do you want to look at that horrible man for? And then Alan Grant is saying, well, what do you know of him? Oh, learnt it at school. He did this. He killed them. He smothered the children. It was horrible. Yeah. Oh, absolute horrible man.
Yeah.
And people believe what they're told. And, if there's one line in a history book, or a child's reader, they will believe that, and they won't investigate further. So
well, let's face it, they're going to study Shakespeare probably before they study the actual real history of something what Shakespeare's written. We should do it in tandem, really. We should look at both sides of the coin, but we didn't at school.
Well, there's a question of how much time there is to do all this.
That's true. It's a big
Which is why I have these huge gaps in the Kings and Queens, but I can tell you whatever you need to know about canals. And there you go. Now I live really near one. I live really near the Bridgewater, which is, we spent quite a lot of time studying that. I thought, when am I ever going to see that?
Yes.
Because, of course, I grew up in London. So, there you go. I live a stone's throw now.
No, it always comes in. No knowledge is wasted, folks. Just, remember that.
Dormant. It's just waiting for its time.
It is. It's that advert on the television at the moment, and it says, your potential's just lying there waiting to be awoken. Go and get trained up.
Right. Indeed. Well, I think we should probably go and get another cup of tea.
I think so too. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Subscribe, like, and generally pass the word around that we're quite amusing at times.
And we even talk about real history.
We do. So until next week, and hopefully Mike will be back with us. We're keeping everything crossed. We'll see you at the next episode of Only Murders in My Mind. Night, Liz.
Night, Carol.
You have been listening to Only Murders in My Mind, a Random Thought production, produced by John Bissett. The music in Peril was composed and recorded by OM Studio Strings.